Now, it's very interesting. One of the things upon reading up on the actual Sandy Keith, and before I received the libretto from the Calgary Opera, was this guy had a serious involvement with gunpowder. And, that's a good one. And gunpowder seems to be something that appeared throughout the beginning of his life, and it is the distinguishing factor of Sandy Keith. So, the opera starts with a prologue, and I believe your first air, and I want to tell people who are listening to this particular opera, I will tell you right now, is all about this lead role and the airs that this guy has to sing. Some of these airs are huge, and
Yes.
they go on forever, and you never seem to leave the stage. And
Actually,
the first one that starts all of this off is "There is no place for poor relations," and that sort of sets the scene. And you were talking about that at the beginning, about the poor relations, that he is the poor relation of Alexander Keith. Now, let's talk about that from the prologue onwards up until Act 1.
Sure. The prologue starts with Alexander Keith Sr., the great brewery maestro, at Christmas time, and there's money, and we're in the Keith home, which is still in Nova Scotia, a beautiful home. I have not seen it, but I saw pictures. And he's there, and it's just like Norman Rockwell with money. It's just incredible. And here is Sandy Keith, who is the nephew who lives in the cellar with his drunk father, who made nothing of himself. And he sees all his nephews getting all these presents, dolls, boats, beautiful presents, and he gets nothing. So, having an affinity towards gunpowder, he puts a little trail of gunpowder towards the Christmas tree and puts up a match, and his mother says, "Drop it." Well, of course he drops it and blows up the Christmas tree. And of course they run around and grab him, put him over his knee, and there's quite a, can you imagine a Scottish family back in the 1800s? Well, there's this big cane, which Alexander Keith, the father doesn't spank him. The uncle does, the powerful uncle that bears his own name. Alexander Keith Jr. grabs a cane and goes to strike him. Well, I stop the frame, and I say one of the best lines in the opera. There is no poor relations. There is no poor relations for a world that's run on money. And this is the whole opera. And then I go on to say all these characters, and then I snap it back to life, and then the scene continues. But to understand this man and what his history might have been, to enable him to think of such acts throughout the rest of his life, it's something we can all take from, or we can all learn from. It's a great human piece. And then it continues. The opera continues.
And so we move into Act 1, and we're in Scene 1. Now, this scene, I believe, takes place in a hotel, and you're with some individuals, and it is in this scene that we are introduced to both Mary, your first love interest, and Smoot.
Yes. This scene takes place with the Southerners. And they love me because they get to come up from the South. You got to understand, at this point during the Civil War, they had little money, and it was very, very little happiness down there. They couldn't drink, they couldn't have a good time. It was pretty horrible lifestyle that they led. So when they came up to Canada, they loved it. It was like going to Vegas for us. They loved it. They had women, they had booze, they could make money again. And so this scene is set up where I'm making my money. But Smoot comes in and says, "These little Southerners mean nothing to you. I'm the real Southerner. I know General Lee, I know Luther, and all that." So Smoot makes me an offer I can't refuse. But through his own arrogance, through Smoot's own arrogance, I devise a plan, as he's telling me his plan, to take all of his money and move south. So I do that. And this is a great scene that sets up the whole storyline. And it's a very true story. I did have Mary, who was my maid, and I had a relationship with her, although it was known, but it wasn't advertised to anybody. And at this point, you understand his dealings, and it all starts.
So, have we met Mary to any great extent in the first scene?
No, we haven't. No, we haven't.
That arrives. I guess that arrives in scene 2, and in scene 2 you begin another big air. I had a great success in Philly.
This is the ragtime that we were discussing earlier.
Really?
This is this 3/8 bar. I had great success in Philly buying choo-choos. It's a wonderful jazzy type of thing, and I'm in a streetcar. Well, I'll do it for you. I'm in a streetcar singing, and I'm taking off all my disguises. This is the disguise, and as I'm singing, and I change into character, and I completely go into a new character, and I pack up my suitcase, and then I say, explode another full-flown from my brain, explode another character, invent another character. And he is extremely proud of himself at this moment to take this arrogant Southerner, take all his money. Now, Mary is still with me at this point, so I go to New York, and I live the high life in New York with all of his money. I never bought the trains for him. To give you a bit of the history, he had given me the money to buy trains from a northern train company, so he could ship them to Canada, and then I could ship them down to the south. And this happened all the time. In Nova Scotia, it was a hotbed for Confederacy conspirators who bought things for the Southern and traded arms so the South could last in the war, because everything was built in the North. So, and this was a true story. It actually happened. So this next scene is after the rail scene, after my quick change. I'm in New York at the Paradise Saloon, which is an actual saloon that exists. Now, it doesn't exist today, but it did back then. It was a very famous saloon. And I'm having the greatest time of my life. And Mary is not, because she's pregnant.
No, she comes in, I believe at this point, with sort of like, I would call it an Ariosa. But Harbor will harbor us now. Now, at this point, you've taken Smoot's money. He hasn't gotten his trains, and he is now in pursuit of you, and which underlines the basis of the story, as we know now. So tell us about how things evolve in the Paradise Saloon.
Well, essentially, I'm living it up. I'm giving everyone champagne and having a great time, and then I find out Mary's pregnant. And at first, I'm taken back by it, but then it's everything I've ever wanted. It's everything she's ever wanted. I'm terribly excited about it. And it's a wonderful scene of melodic line where we sing this somewhere, where we will find our home and where we will find this happiness, and we'll find it, and I'll become a father, and you will become a wife. I will marry you. I will take you you will not be my maid anymore. I will marry you. And, of course, just when everything is perfect for Sandy, Smoot comes in, and the bar turns in. Of course, because I buy everyone drinks there, they get me out of the bar, and I'm on my own. And that's when I leave Mary. Mary, in the history of it, I tell Mary that to wait in New York, and I will come and get you, but I never do. Eventually, she goes back to Halifax, very distraught, and that's in the real life story. So it's a horrible change for me, and I think that kind of weighs heavy on him throughout the opera.
Well, from that point on, we move into the next scene, and there we have, guess what? Another air. It will end with a big fine house. And from where this takes place, I would assume that this is a slightly jauntier air.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, that aria happens in the scene with Mary.
Okay, right. I'm confused. Yeah. So we've now surpassed that. I was listening to you.
Yes.
Now we have surpassed that, and we're now in the beer garden scene.
Yeah.
I believe it is. You've left New York, I guess, at this point?
Yes, and